It is being bold. It is being brilliant. It's being non-apologetic about what we're doing.
You know, we had to leverage those abilities and just to come to the table and execute like never before.
Bring in capable people, coach them, make sure they're connected to the outcome, and let them run.
As a leader and with your team, have to have the will to win.
Connecting more with our humanity and, pausing for a moment to be the human beings that we are.
But with humility, you know that you can leverage that skill set that people have and let them be their best.
This will be a time of innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG live virtual briefing covering what matters most to drive a winning agenda and make the future a better place. A warm welcome to today's host, Lead Principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to those folks from the West Coast and Silicon Valley. I'm Hunter Muller, Lead Principal of HMG Strategy. My team and I are delighted to be here today, and I think we have a world-class agenda for you folks. So buckle in and stay with us for the hour and a half. Boy, things have changed, right? Unbelievable change in the total business technology climate in the complete world. And we have a lot of exciting things to talk about today on how folks are leading courageously, leading passionately, leading authentically through this crisis. It gives me a lot of pride and respect to thank our partners and sponsors here today, CyberArk, Synack, and Okta. Real heartfelt thanks to your support of the HMG platform, the CISO series, as well as the CIO series, supporting the largest technology executive network in North America, arguably potentially the world, as we pivoted to this digital format. And our nonprofit partner, GenesisWorks, we'll hear more from them in a minute. Well, so look, we've adjusted to the digital journey here, accelerating forward, launching some 30 to 60 digital events over the past 2 months, and for the next 2 months into September, we'll go to a hybrid format. We think this is all good for the power of the platform, the network, and for you to access anytime, any place, the HMG Summit thought leadership, giving you the courage to lead, the courage to win, and excite you to hopefully innovate in a safe environment going forward. Again, you can visit our website at hmgstrategy.com and learn more at HMG Live under the event tab. Thank you. And a big thanks again for Zooming in today and Zoom being our partner today, hosting today's webinar. So let's introduce our first speaker for the day, a friend and a partner for some 10 years, the president and CEO of GenesisWorks. David, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Hunter. It's nice to be here.
Great to have you here. Where are you are you in Houston?
I am in Houston today, yes.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about GenesisWorks and the great work that you're doing.
You bet. So GenesisWorks is a social enterprise that provides pathways to careers in technology for students from low-income backgrounds. And so what happens, we identify students during their junior year in high school. During the summer, they go through an 8-week intensive training program of both professional skills and technical skills, because then we place them in year-long internships. And they're in companies like Salesforce, Kirkland & Ellis, Okta, which I want to call out Hector Aguilar, who's President of Technology at Okta, who's on the executive panel later today. And so, while these companies provide great experiences for our students, the fact is that these students provide a great source of diverse, local, and skilled talent. And, a lot of these students go on to great careers in technology. In your chat box, I think you'll be pleased to see a story about a guy by the name of Su Yang, who did his internship at 3M and is now a cybersecurity analyst at General Mills, who went through the GenesisWorks program. And so, last year we served 4,000 students, nearly 500 in the Bay Area. Those students earned over $1 million in wages. And, in terms of the COVID-19, GenesisWorks has has had to pivot just like all of you. So our students are working remotely, amazingly. 80% of them are still in their internship. And so, unfortunately, 20% of them lost their internship, but they worked for 9 months and they're ready to do work, whether it's local or remote. And they've been terrific. So, just if people on this call would be interested, also in the chat box, we have our annual impact report. You just take 2 or 3 minutes and take a glance. And if there's anything in there that is interesting, we would love for you to be able to contact us.
David, excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And folks, again, look in your chat box. You can learn more about GenesisWorks or reach out to them at genesisworks.org. We'll see you again next time, David. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Hunter.
Bye now.
You bet.
Next up, our partner, CyberArk, Brandon Traffanstedt. Brandon's an amazing individual. He's a global director of systems engineering, one of our top picks in terms of companies to watch at CyberArk, as well as Brandon's a great speaker. Brandon, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Hunter. So happy to be here. Morning, everybody.
Great to see you, and thanks for making time out of your busy day. Hey, look, let's talk about post-crisis. Let's get positive here, right? In the work at home environment, what changed in terms of the enterprise risk profile in your point of view?
So what we've been seeing change, Hunter, is the perimeter, right? Forever, you've heard folks, and probably many of you yourselves have talked about this perimeter dissolving, but never has it been more apparent than in recent months, where most of our workforce doesn't exist in that same network perimeter we've put together. So we've seen a lot of recertification of trust, not only for our actual employees, but also for very low trusted entities like third parties we rely on to connect into our environments and to administer the same systems that likely are the lifeblood of our businesses. Naturally, with this change, we're also seeing folks accelerate movement to the cloud from, it's a nice to have, and maybe I'll throw a little infrastructure up there, to, oh my goodness, we need to have the level of availability, but also service meshing that cloud providers can give us. So it just accelerated movement in all the directions we were going in beforehand, but now we had to move in that direction.
Well, what are the biggest risks then from a work from home environment?
A lot of folks will talk about how the threat surface has increased, and I don't necessarily agree with that. The threat surface remains pretty similar. Humans, us, workers, we still remain the same, but there's a degree of uncertainty that I think all of us have felt. There's also that degree of distraction like never before. Not to say that distraction is a bad thing, but for instance, and you can't tell because of the amazing background behind me, but if I turn around, one step out of my office, there's a refrigerator filled with all kinds of amazing snacks. By having that distraction, I may be slightly less considerate of clicking on a funny cat video email, which admittedly I put CyberArk InfoSec to the test all the time with my errant clicks. But us humans have only so much capacity for attention. And these days, it's really important to make sure that we're reminding our end user base of some proactive controls they can take. The other thing that I'll mention as it relates to moving to the cloud is we see infrastructure and permissioning being set up very quickly. If us as security leaders aren't there with our cloud architecture team, we're seeing this, for lack of a better way to describe it, bloat of privileged roles. And recently, attackers have been using that to move laterally in our cloud quicker than they have in the past. So again, one of the best things you can do right now without having to buy anything is recertify your existing platforms. Look at open source utilities that help you find visibility. It might surprise you what you'll find out there.
Thanks, Brandon. What's unique about CyberArk, and what should folks come away with today? Not a sales pitch, but give us your best shot at what's unique about CyberArk and why you folks matter and are relevant.
Sure, glad to answer that. One of the things that was of key interest to me when I started at CyberArk a number of moons ago was the focus on privileged access. That is, of all of the access, of all of the use in your environments, the stuff that leads to attacks are typically elevated accounts and roles and permission sets. So for us, we see that being involved in every breach, and we've made sure to focus on that element. And with that focus on doing things like making environments as caustic as possible for threat actors when moving laterally, it's generated a lot of internal passion. This passion is irrelevant from our C-level to our R&D teams, even to the field teams that you likely interact with day to day. So focus and passion, I think, are the two key differentiators in general, at least from my engineering standpoint at CyberArk.
And then click down a little bit further about privileged access security, why that's so important to secure.
Every breach involves privileged access. There's no doubt about it. Attackers don't typically like to adhere to the concepts of least privilege. So if I'm looking to compromise any environment, whether it be to exfiltrate data, disrupt operations, I'm probably going to be looking at one of those creamy, nougaty, tasty privileged accounts. And they'll tell you, attackers these days don't really discriminate. We're not just focusing on Windows domain secrets or Linux accounts or cloud management console access. It's all across the board, from those 1970s IBM Z-series mainframes all the way up to code that may exist in public code repositories existing in with secrets in a hard-coded state. So I think when we dial down to it, privilege is involved in every attack, and it's everywhere. And I mean, cars have privileged accounts, and while that's not something CyberArk deals with, it's there. Your refrigerator that I was talking about earlier, if it's gives you a little screen on the outside, chances are there's a root account that's running the services there. So we can't really escape it.
Have you seen a lot of nation-state threats and just activity post the crisis in the past 8-10 weeks?
So nation states, I think, will continue on a very steady flow. Right? Nation state attacks are ones that we typically have the most difficulty preventing, because if given enough time, if given enough money, any entry point becomes the prime one. But what we've been seeing more lately are attacks of opportunity. That is, attackers taking advantage of uncertainty, attackers taking advantage of these level of distractions. So while an attacker running scripts or propagating ransomware out there might not be as frightening as a nation state, it only takes one endpoint to start lateral movement and compromise. So more attacks of opportunity, with nation states continuing, at least from my perspective, to be even.
Brandon, you folks are a real leader in the industry, in your market space. Little context about how long you've been around and how big you are.
So CyberArk's been around for the better part of 20 years now. We're over 1,000 at this point, with a pretty even split between R&D and then field support teams, including groups like our customer success group, whose only goal is to, well, do exactly what's on the tin there. So we continue growing at a very steady clip, and admittedly, and I'll fanboy a little bit, I'm incredibly happy.
A recent acquisition, I understand?
That's right. Last Thursday, we announced the acquisition of a solution called Adaptive, which deals primarily with things like cloud directory unification, some additional authentication, as well as things like centralized access.
Brandon, last parting comment. What does winning in the secure world, the secure enterprise, look like now for a thriving, striving CISO into the C-suite in the line of business? What does winning look like?
So admittedly, as an engineer, I tend to be quite biased. Winning involves having strong technology. Yes, I mean, we all know that, right? Buttons are great. Shiny lights are very good too. But winning also includes making sure that you're appreciating the people who make your security solutions possible in the organization, being transparent with your end users, being direct with them, finding ways to increase their operational benefits rather than just saying, hey, here's security, you're going to do this thing because it's the right thing to do. It's also important to have a process, right? To challenge your vendors and your partners to help you establish these processes that allow you to get past that first degree of compliance or regulatory success to build true programs. So technology is important. Making sure the people in the process are also there and you're supporting them, that's what we believe to be true success in this space.
Hey, Brandon, great to be with you here today. True thought leadership. Folks, check out CyberArk and Brandon. Really one of HMG top pick. Great job. So, hey, next up, Ed Amoroso doesn't need an introduction. I think everyone in the world knows Ed in the security space, in the corporate security space, and loves Ed Amoroso. Ed Amoroso, founder and CEO of Tag Cyber. Ed, welcome to the program.
Hi, Hunter. How you doing?
Great. Good to see you. Are you home, safe, I'm assuming somewhere in the New York metro area?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into Manhattan pretty soon, but enjoying the time away a little bit.
Great. Are we going to do a little dialogue today, or do you have some slides? What's your preference?
No slides. Let's talk.
Great, love it. So, hey, let's talk about big ideas. When you saw the pandemic, what was your first tracking of it? Did you see it in Asia? Did you see it in Europe? Did you see it in the States? And what were you thinking about early on?
You know, I was thinking exponential. I'm a data scientist like many of the people listening. And in cybersecurity, one of the things you learn quickly is that a small thing that's growing exponentially becomes a big thing real fast. So I'll tell you, just, I don't know, 60 days ago, I have a picture of myself more or less sitting in a restaurant in New Jersey thinking everything was just fine. And 30 days later, we were the worst in the whole, maybe the whole world in terms of the rate of growth and the problem. And we don't live in a, for me personally, I don't live in a very densely populated area, but that exponentiation is driven by other things. So as a computer scientist, that's the first thing that struck me. I thought, you know, my goodness, there's a lot of little exponentials here, and this is going to require quite a bit of work to stop.
Okay, and then when you started tracking some of your clients across the globe and it began to hit your clients, as you probably are really well networked globally, what were you thinking? How were you coaching your clients along the way? And bring it up to current day. What are you thinking now?
Yeah, it's been tough because I'm always looking for good advice to provide to clients. And here, let me share with you the maybe something that a lot of people have found helpful, and a little bit of background. First off, most of my career, like at AT&T, I was coaching people who coach. And I'll bet there's a lot of people here now who are looking for leadership advice. But more recently, I coach doers. You know, I'm talking to a lot of people who don't necessarily need leadership tips. They need some reinforcement to deal with all of the uncertainty in their lives. Like, imagine being a millennial right now, and you've been in the workforce for 5-6 years, maybe doing pen testing or some cybersecurity thing, and you may not lead a team. And all of a sudden there's both financial and health stress to you, to your family, to your team, to your company, to your region, to the nation, to the globe. It's pretty scary, pretty unsettling. And when they sit down for advice from an old guy like me, they're looking for some guidance on how to deal with this uncertainty. And here's what I've been telling them. And I'd be interested to see what the participants think, because this seems to resonate. And I wasn't saying this in the beginning, but I said it a few times. I could see in people's eyes it was working, so I'll share back. I've been telling people basically to use their actions today to send a message to their 1 year from now self, meaning do something today, act today in a way that you'll be proud of when you look back in a year. Meaning, did you use the time to maybe improve yourself a little bit? I mean, it's a little bit more downtime for people. Did you take advantage of that? Or did you plop the feet up and watch Netflix? You know, did you use the time to reach out to customers? I would say, I'll bet, Hunter, maybe we've learned from you that if there's one thing that differentiates winners from losers, it's how focused you are on your customers. So we all would say we don't reach out to customers enough. So are you doing that? Are you using the time wisely? Are you doing things today that when you look back on this, you say, that was good. I'm proud of what I was doing then. That seems to resonate because that translates almost to anybody's job, whether you're, you know, a white hat hacker or you're leading 10,000 people on an ops team. In both cases, you can look in the mirror and say, am I doing the right thing? Now, that doesn't mean that you should be working 24 hours a day, because as I said, we're all leading these very, very complex lives right now. Like, I'm at home right now. My daughter's taking like a final exam on the other side of the wall here. I mean, it's like our family and our team and our nation and our region and the globe all intertwined. So it could be that some of the actions you're taking now that you'll look back on may be helping, you know, maybe there's some senior citizens nearby who maybe haven't had anybody come by. You go stand on their lawn and say something nice. That's just as important as the kinds of things you do at work. So that's what I've been sort of coaching my team and the CISOs that I coach on a regular basis. We have that discussion all the time. And when I catch up with clients, that always seems to come up. So I hope that's a helpful kind of imagery. That's something that seems to resonate with, certainly with my team.
That's brilliant. Really genius, Ed. It's a very humanistic, compassionate point of view in the world, right? And reaching out to your friends, your neighbors, your community to be more open. And I think in general, that whole notion of living a year in the future keeps you thinking, looking around the corner and trying to figure out what's next, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you would agree that, I think you agree, there's one word that characterizes where we are right now. It's uncertainty. That's what, there's all this uncertainty. There's certain principles that we learn when we get into business or do tech, you know, being honest and have integrity and being hardworking and being, you know, true to your beliefs and on and on. These are things that never change. But when the circumstances change, it can cause you to be a little wobbly. Here's another example. When I see people say, gosh, what's changed here? I always say it's the consequence. So for example, threat to infrastructure really involves the same vulnerabilities we had 2 months ago. I mean, I know a lot of people are working from home and things have changed, but for more or less same kind of infrastructure, but the consequences are different. Like we're on a Zoom session right now. What if a nation state decided to really DDoS the Zoom infrastructure, which I know sits behind CDN and they've got all the things up, but you know, anybody on this call knows that a determined enough nation state could go after Zoom. What would that mean? I mean, would that bring commerce down for a large portion of the globe? Maybe. So that's the same attack. Could have done that 6 months ago. I'll bet none of us would have cared, but today we care. So the consequence of a lot of attacks can change quickly. The attack vectors don't change overnight. Consequences do, though. And that's why I think the risk has grown so dramatically, because we're all working so differently, so quickly. And we've been lucky. We haven't really had the kind of large-scale attacks that I was worried about when this started. In addition to that exponential thing, my mind immediately went to just about every time I've ever seen a problem, it links back to some change, some infrastructure change, some business process change, the management change. Whenever there's change, there's flux. Whenever there's flux, there's errors. And whenever there's errors, there's vulnerabilities. You got some people on the call here and as part of our next panel who know quite a bit about that. And I think they'll probably agree that change is a root cause in security attack.
Ed, this is brilliant insights. And thank you so very much for coming on the program today to share your insights. How can people reach out to you to learn more about your company, TAG?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a website, tag-cyber.com. We're in business to disrupt research and advisory basically by democratizing. You know, my wife jokes that my business model is to give everything away for free and make up in volume. And sometimes I think she's right, but we really do spend a lot of time trying to educate and train and inform practitioners and CISOs and even undergraduates and graduates into not just the industry, but also the right technologies that are going to be useful.
Excellent, brilliant. Thanks for coming on the program. Let's invite the panelists onto the program and let's get the panel going.
That's good. Okay. That's good. I'll ask the panelists to hop on, and you guys can just go ahead and hit the off mute button unless you've got a screaming baby or a loud barking dog. One of the things that's become so endearing during the COVID era is that where in the past you would have been horrified to have your kids make noise during a video call, now it makes you seem so human, right? It's almost like you want to train the kids to come over. And I tell people, if you suspect you're about to get fired on Zoom, make sure your little 3-year-old runs over and you probably save your job. So it's really changed quite a bit. Listen, the topic of our panel here is about leading courageously in this very uncertain era that we're going through. The way we'll do it is, as we discussed, we're going to let each of you just take a couple minutes, little intro. You all got spectacularly interesting backgrounds. Maybe you can talk about your company, your interest, your belief. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what it means to lead courageously. What does that even mean? Does that mean standing up to authority? Does that mean staying true to your belief? Does that mean telling the truth? I'll be asking each of you to help me with maybe some insights that we can share with the participants here around your definition of courageous. And there'll be some questions here. And as they pop up, I'll make sure I pluck out only the really difficult questions for you guys and leave the easy ones out. So what we'll do is let's start with Hector. Maybe Hector, you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move on to the other panel.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
You can. You sound
Perfect.
great.
All right. So I'm Hector Aguilar. I'm the president of technology at Okta. That means that I run the teams that develop the software, the Okta service, the team that keeps the service running, the technical operations team. And I also run business technology and enablement, which are basically the teams that are writing all of the code, connecting everything together to run the Okta business, and provisioning the hardware and the networking so that employees can do their work. And for those of you who do not know, Okta is an identity service. We basically provide identity for the enterprise, both for people that are trying to connect their employees to applications that they need to do their work, like Zoom, like Slack, email, and whatever cloud application do you want to use, or on-premise applications as well. And we also have an API product so that for people that want to, let's say, use an identity system to sell their product and connect to customers, we also do that as well. So that's me, and that's Okta, and very happy to be here.
Welcome to the panel, and it'll be so interesting to get some of your perspective, and particularly given the obvious prominence of cloud identity today, right? I mean,
exactly.
You guys were invented to help us work our way through the kinds of situations we're going through now. So welcome, and thank you. Why don't we go next to Todd? Todd, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the work, and we'll be very eager to hear.
Hey, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. So I'm Todd Friedman. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Resmed, and we're a health tech company. We're headquartered in San Diego. We do business in hundreds of countries around the world. And our core business for many years was being a physical medical device company. We make CPAP machines and ventilators. And over the last decade, we've become a healthcare informatics company and really a health tech company. So we've got two core businesses, which is these medical devices and these SaaS solutions for out-of-hospital care. And a smaller part of our business is ventilators. And so as you can imagine, this crisis has been transformative for so many companies, and for the ability to really test how quickly you can respond to situations. And for us, we got a pretty early notice of what was going on because we do have a manufacturing center and a company in China. And we were in Wuhan providing ventilators to people. And we've got a great photograph of one of our people in a hazmat suit training doctors how to use the ventilators, which is just amazing. And, out of every crisis comes many good things, of course. But for us, it's, we pride ourselves, and it's our purpose to help improve patients' lives and to help improve our customers' businesses. But the ability to actually give life and to sustain life has been incredible. And it's something that really resonated through the company. So as we've gone through a lot of challenges, we've kind of got that at our core. We've also gotten a lot of notoriety, which is unusual. I benefited from being under the radar to a certain degree. Most people don't know who Resmed is, and suddenly a lot of people know who Resmed is. So I'm not excited about a bigger target on our back, but there's a lot of opportunity there too to celebrate the controls that we do have in place in the program that we have for security.
Well, we are excited to have you here. We appreciate the work you and your company are doing. Keep up the good work. Saving lives seems like a pretty good reason to go to work each day. So we do appreciate it. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about your fine work? And it's funny, you and I were last together, I guess in February at RSA. It seems like 2 minutes and also 10 years ago, right? A lot has happened in just a few days.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Crazy, Ed. Yeah, thanks so much, Ed. Great to see you again. And Hunter, thanks for facilitating this. Jay Kaplan, the CEO and co-founder of Synack. We are a company that has reinvented the penetration testing space. We've been at it about 8 years thus far. And it's been really exciting to see just how much the enterprise has adopted and embraced this model. We've really moved companies away from this whole notion of let's come in once a year and do an assessment of our security posture or an application's vulnerabilities to a cadence where we're testing all the time, 365 days a year, not with just one individual, but typically with 100 of the top security researchers around the world. Our network has grown drastically over the years. You know, we're in the thousands of security researchers, connecting them in a safe and trusted way to our enterprise customers. And we're really pleased to be working with a lot of companies through this crisis, not only as their perimeter has extended, as Brandon was mentioning before, outside of the firewall, but you know, companies like pharmaceuticals and government agencies who are really at the front lines of this crisis and who need to protect these assets, get them online quickly. We're very well equipped to helping them make sure that there are not vulnerabilities sitting out there in the wild and ultimately, you know, causing big data breaches. So it's really exciting to be part of this effort, helping these companies stay secure, and really looking forward to this panel and talking more about what we're seeing through, you know, the many companies that we work with today.
That's great. And the work you guys do is so important given the changes in architecture. I mean, that visibility to vulnerabilities from an internet vantage point, I can't think of anything that would be more valuable to companies that are trying to figure out the implication of change. I really appreciate the great work that you do. Well, welcome to the panel.
Thanks.
And certainly, last but not least, Vijaya, the only reason you're last here is alphabetically, your last name came in fourth. But I think in terms of interest, we're so pleased to have you part of our panel. Tell us a little bit about the fine work that you do and a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Hunter, for the opportunity to be here. This is my first time on HMG, so very excited to be part of the panel and to meet all of you. I work for Airbnb. I've been there for about 9 months now. And I have a dual role at Airbnb. First is as a chief security officer, responsible for all of the traditional information security of our data assets, users, all of that. And the second is as head of engineering and data science for trust and safety, building all of the technology, machine learning models and data science and platforms and frameworks necessary to detect and mitigate any kind of risk and fraud and bad activity on the platform, and thereby, you know, just kind of build the confidence and trust for our guests and hosts that are using the platform. So it's a very interesting role in a very interesting company. Obviously, great, interesting times for us as well.
Well, we're all rooting for the hospitality industry to come back very quickly. I suspect it will. And I think Airbnb is very lucky to have someone with your background helping to stave off cyber attacks. So good luck with that. Now we're going to go all the way back to Hector. And I want to ask Hector this question about courage during a situation like this. And it'll be the same question for each of you on this round. Hector, has there been a time during this, maybe the last 2 months or so, when you felt or seen or observed or experienced someone exhibiting some courage in what they were doing? It might have been standing up for a thing they believe in, or it might have been, you know, telling the truth where maybe that might not have been the message that people necessarily want to hear, or doing something creative and innovative that maybe hadn't been tried but is necessary. I'll let you fill in the blanks on what your definition might be, but have you seen some of that? And maybe you can share a little bit about either what you've seen or done personally.
You know, it sounds terrible that I'm talking about our CEO because it's going to look like I'm kind of trying to be nice, but actually I believe our CEO did amazingly well during the COVID times, because, you know, during when you have a period of such uncertainty, you know, I think a lot of people were very nervous with what was happening. And I think our CEO and the executive team at Okta made a very courageous decision to just, you know, close the offices as soon as we could and basically get everybody ready to start working from home. And you know, we had, because kind of the engineering team, the technology team, and I can talk a little bit about kind of how we already had kind of a culture of working from home, and we were already working on dynamic work. But, you know, I think it took a lot of courage to say, you know, we don't know exactly what the future is going to bring, but right now you're safe and your safety and your health is the most important thing. So we're gonna close the offices. You guys should go work from home, get your work from home setups ready, and then we'll see how we deal with this crisis. And I think in these times, it's just so important to be, first of all, very open and very flexible, but also it's incredibly important to be clear, because when you have so much uncertainty, it's just important to basically have something that you can hold on to and say, okay, at least I know that this is how we're gonna work now, and it's very clear to me, and I know what to do, and then I'm just gonna go and execute. I think that was very, very important.
Yeah. Was there a little pushback in the beginning when the decision was made to bring everybody back to their home office? Was that something some folks had questioned?
Of course, I think there was a lot of discussion, especially in the e-staff meetings, because we didn't know. You know, we were listening everything that was happening. There was so much noise, and I think again, bringing kind of the clarity about our priorities, which is first health and safety of our employees, and then everything else. And then I think that having that kind of clarity helped us kind of make decisions based on that and making sure that everybody was safe. And that's the most important thing, and continues to be. But yeah, of course, like, with the very little information and things kind of escalated very quickly. Things were moving incredibly fast.
I think great leaders are focused on outcomes. And if it had turned out that there was a false alarm and everyone went home, well, then it's still a good outcome. And rather than worry about, well, am I saving face? I've always admired people who decide, look, here's what's important, and let's make sure we stick with that, even in the face of some criticism. So that's a wonderful story. I hope people who are listening right now, who may be faced with similar types of problems, will focus on the outcome. Make sure that you optimize to the most likely good outcome. That's a very good story. Thanks, Hector. Todd, how about, it's easy to get into stories of courage in your case, in your industry, but maybe amongst the, say the technical community, security community, have you seen some folks who, or yourself, who've been forced to do some things that require a little bit of courage? What's been your observation there, and what might you be able to share with us?
Yeah, this has been an amazing leadership opportunity, because if people were looking to leadership, they were looking to strength and direction. And, one of the toughest things about leadership, I think, is change and change management. And this is an example where, we've talked about digital transformation and digital disruption for years, and it suddenly happened in a week. And so I don't think of a scenario I could have come up with where everybody had to move home for an indefinite time. And, but for some people, they're very comfortable with that. For IT, most IT people are very comfortable at home. They work home part of the time already. But some people didn't even have internet access. Some people had never used Zoom before, and it was very uncomfortable. And when you think about, we're a pretty big company, 7,500 people, and it's so diverse in so many different ways, in so many different countries. And so having maybe the inner strength to be able to try to create trust and sustain trust with the work, with the staff, has been really important. And, there's been no shortage of tricks and things that have happened that, that come up, like Zoom, having security problems, and not so much Zoom having security problems, because I think they responded so well to it. It's really almost a textbook example of how bad things can happen, even bad decisions can be made, and how quickly you can pivot from that. But Zoom created some challenges for me, because I had dozens of people asking me, should we be using Zoom? And, we had to do some things to make it more secure. But most importantly, we had to build a sense of trust that, yes, it's okay. Use your common sense. But, when I think about courage, I think one of the most challenging things during a time of crisis is staying true to your purpose and your principles. And this is a time when there were so many competing objectives and so many competing outcomes to a degree. Now, our company was totally focused on shifting to creating ventilators and saving as many lives as we could. So I think we had an advantage there. But, there was still, there's always that balance of secure versus innovation versus agility versus speed. And I think it became a little more aggressive, having to do that balance. And I know people aren't necessarily less secure at home, but they are more prone to doing insecure things if they're using the same computer all day long. I think we were fortunate in that we had planned for a lot of this in over the last year or so and making some really good strategic investments with companies. Okta as a great example. We identified vulnerabilities and we've used tools to change that, but we've also had to try to create an environment where security is pushed down to everybody, where it's a shared responsibility. And this is another time where we can leverage this coronavirus to say, now that you're home, you can see how you are the perimeter. And so you can almost change the dialogue a little bit to be able to reinforce the fact that security is a shared responsibility and that you have to use common sense and use the tools and don't go around security. We're here to help and we're here to try to make sure that our patients and our stakeholders are all covered.
Yeah. Let's stay up real quickly on the common sense point, because I think that's related to courage. A lot of times people like you and I, doing security, will see something that makes no sense in terms of business process, but has an alternative that makes perfect sense. And like with Zoom as an example, like I blogged about this. People were staying off Zoom, like to talk to their mother or something because they were worried about security vulnerabilities. And they'd ask me, are there vulnerabilities? And I'd go, well, yeah, but you can totally talk to your mom on Zoom. It really doesn't matter. Have you seen some of that where you've had to say, now hold on a minute here. We're going to do the common sense thing because we're in a situation that's tough. Let's use our heads. Have you seen some things like that?
Maybe an acceleration. And again, I think there's an opportunity with this changing the way that we work and creating so much flexibility and creating almost a meritocracy. You get rid of so many of the barriers to working together. It makes no sense, right? You think that when people are together, you'd be more collaborative. But we've seen so much more collaboration in the use of tools and having to be a little bit more structured. But for me, it's an ongoing battle. It's not just tied to today. And that is, can you just use the tools that have been tested and approved and that are managed?
Yeah.
This desire to use another collaboration tool when we've already got 2 or 3 that are approved. I mean, that never makes sense to me. And is it because you're more comfortable with Slack over Teams? Or, it's that type of a question. Really, I mean, for me, this is biased, but I think that the most simple environment that we can have, the more secure it can be. And so for people that are trying to complicate it through tools that'll do the exact same thing in just slightly different ways, it's a little mind-boggling.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Jay, you are a CEO of a very cool company. I've seen you operate with your team, and you're amazing. I want to ask you a little bit about it. It's related to this cards thing. We're all pretty upbeat, and I know you and a lot of the other folks on the panel are upbeat because we're technologists and we're in an area that's done reasonably well through this situation. But let's face it, there's massive unemployment. Gosh only knows what's coming in terms of maybe inflation, maybe not, I don't know. Stimulus has hit, and now maybe we'll see some business fail. When you get with your team and they ask you, hey, coach, what's coming? We're uncertain. We're nervous about the economy. Well, what do you tell them? Like, what's been your advice when you've got a team that needs to stay focused, but that also you can't gloss over the fact, none of us can gloss over the fact that this is a very unusual time. And, there's some economists who predict some pretty dire things coming. And as a CEO, I know you and your CFO have to watch that carefully. Well, what's your advice for people and how do you approach that with your own team?
Yeah, thanks for the sentiment, Ed. So, I think first and foremost, what gives me some, I guess, just helps me sleep a little bit better at night is remembering the fact that our company has basically been built for this crisis. When we started the company 8 years ago, it was really built under the premise that there was not enough cybersecurity talent. We needed to tap the global supply, and we needed a safe and trusted mechanism to connect them to our enterprise customers. Regardless of the fact that it is more of a crowdsourced model, it is a very well-trusted model, given the vetting that we have in place and the technology controls. And so with that said, when we started moving into this work from home environment, it made us realize pretty quickly, wow, we have a platform that facilitates connecting the security fabric to customers who traditionally would maybe have never thought about leveraging this type of talent remotely, but now here is a mechanism to be able to do that. So we've actually found a lot of new use cases for the platform that we've built, even outside of just the traditional work that we do in the pen testing space. So with that said, answering your question, I think that obviously puts our employees at a bit of ease. And I think it really has enabled even our researchers globally to be more productive than ever. We've seen actually a 250% increase in the number of vulnerabilities found in our community. We've seen a 70% increase in the amount of activity since March on a year-over-year basis. And I think it's because people are spending more time at home. Maybe they are unemployed. So these security researchers, maybe they just want to help, or they're trying to earn a little extra income. But it's been exciting to just know that we have a company that has really been able to thrive through this crisis, and I'm sure will continue to thrive beyond. Fortunately as well, we have some exciting news that we'll announce next week, but we're in a really good financial position. I think we timed, bring money into the company at just the right time. And so there's really no stress there. We haven't had to do any layoffs. We're in a really healthy place. And I think that gives our employees just a lot of comfort. To your earlier question, just, and kind of the theme of this discussion, I think, I've been through now, we facilitate about 5 different CISO panels or roundtables where CISOs have been just talking about how their lives have changed through this crisis. And one of the things that I find incredibly interesting through these conversations is the realization that CISOs are probably the one role in these organizations that are thinking about crisis every single day. They're always thinking about that what if scenario, or how do I make sure that scenario doesn't happen? And they're kind of stepping outside of their normal, tactical roles and helping these organizations thrive and create a new sense of normal. And I think that will continue to be a theme here, leaning on the CISO beyond just the security function and leaning on them for even just organizational management and other things in the company.
Yeah, it's tough when, and I know you sell to every sector, and when you have a close friend that might be running a security team, like I have a good friend that I do business with who's in the gaming industry, and we're talking tomorrow, and it's all about how does he deal with, the business is basically shut down, and it's kind of frightening, and they've got to make sure they stay protective of threat. But, there are some industries that are pretty devastated. So I'm sure you must have some customers that are have gone to hell and back. You hope they're coming back, but it's hard to minimize in some industries how tough it's been.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think some industries are obviously insulated, but I think there's still a little bit of an unknown as to how budgets are going to be impacted from a cybersecurity perspective. But yeah. I think we all recognize, budgets are not just simply going away. They'll be a little bit more constrained, particularly in industries like retail and others that have been hard hit. But I think for the most part, we're seeing things operate business as usual, which is good for our business, of course.
Well, if you guys are selling to my beloved New York Yankees, I hope you keep them safe, and I'm looking forward to them getting back out on the field. They should be winning a pennant right now instead of sitting.
I agree. I'm a Yankees fan and has been since I was a little kid, so I'm there with you, Ed.
Now, Vijaya, you're in one of the industries that certainly has had some difficulty. We all know you're coming back. Everybody in this call is a fan of what you do, and they're lucky to have you there guiding through these tough times. What sort of messages do you see maybe in the trenches or from your senior executives or with you and your team that might help us understand how you show courage? Because I think at Airbnb, it really does require that you guys show some courage now. This is not the easiest time for the industry.
Yeah.
But how are you guys, what's some guidance that you would give in general to people about managing through a tough time?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you were saying, courage means different things to different people and also at different times. For us in particular, 3 things stood out as we looked at past several weeks. First is making really fast decisions, and making fast decisions in the time when we have very, very little information, right? So being comfortable with making decisions, much beyond even the typical 80-20 rule or whatever else you may be thinking about. It's really little information. And also being comfortable that a lot of the decisions that you make may or may not be right at the end of the crisis, right? So you have to be courageous enough to continue to make those decisions very quickly. And the second thing is, from a resiliency perspective, being adaptable and being willing to look at every part of your strategy and being willing to change almost anything, right? And, as an example, we went from physical experiences to online experiences really quickly based on the trends and the changes we're seeing in industry and the changing business conditions. But the key word there is being willing, right? It doesn't mean that you have to throw away everything and you have to change necessarily everything, but that mindset of, hey, I'm going to give this really critical eye and going to look at everything and nothing is off the table. And that takes a lot of courage to actually do that. And the last thing I would say, the third thing from a courage standpoint, is how we engage with our teams with compassion, with empathy, and showing vulnerability. Especially in the last couple of weeks as we went through our recent layoffs and letting go of some people, one of the things that, as difficult as this is for any company, I feel like our leadership team, our CEO, handled it extremely well in terms of dealing with utmost compassion and empathy, and showing vulnerability and dealing with humanity. So all of those things need a lot of courage. As I'm talking to my own teams in my day-to-day role, a lot of questions come up in terms of, hey, how do we know what we're doing is right? So the biggest thing that I tell people is, look, we don't know everything and we cannot predict. One of the things this crisis has done is it has leveled the playing field for everybody. We all have very little information, and we do the best we can. Doesn't mean we get it right, but we are going to be very open and honest about looking back at our results and our decisions to say what went well, what didn't go well, and being very open and honest about it. So, for us, courage meant those three things really. To sum it up, faster decisions, being adaptable and willing to change anything, and being open and honest and vulnerable in our engagement with our teams.
That is really wonderful. I have a feeling Hunter is going to want to take that little clip and probably play it between sessions at one of the next conferences. That was really beautiful and really inspiring. I think that's great advice. Hey, Todd, I want to ask you, one of the questions that's popped in from the participants here is about attacks and whether they're going up or down. Jay had alluded to some pretty striking numbers there. You guys, you were critical infrastructure. Now you're really critical infrastructure. I'm really curious, Todd, whether you guys are you seeing it go down, the same, or up, or what kind of trends, both for say probes coming from the outside, phishing attacks, all these different categories that we all tend to use to answer that question. But what are you seeing? What are you guys seeing in the trenches?
We are seeing more activity, but the fact is so many of our partners block things before they ever get to us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really positive part of the story, is the more that we can protect the endpoints and the environment, the less we're at risk of those phishing attacks, for instance.
There's more pebbles hitting the armor, but the armor's still working. Exactly.
But thank goodness for companies. And I don't want to name any names here, but if you have a really good, aggressive email security partner, they're going to keep a lot of that stuff from your door. And I think that's important. But that said, we are all on high alert, and our operations team has probably never been leaning forward more than they are today, because we know that we're at higher risk. We know that people are taking advantage of the COVID websites and curiosity of humans. People's home networks are less secure. And so a lot of this is really about training people to be more alert to anomalies and unusual behavior. And if something doesn't feel right, go with it. It's probably not right. But again, and we do as much as we can on the endpoints to protect the endpoints, but it still comes down to personal responsibility. And so we are definitely sending the message to be more hyper aware that the risks are higher today.
Do you guys tend to worry as much about insider as outsider threats? Is an insider something you spend a lot of time on?
It's something we think about, but not as much as external threats, because
external
we do have,
scare.
Yeah, we've had issues in the past. I don't want to name countries that might want to steal our intellectual property.
Can't imagine. I can't think of one.
But doing business globally, you have to accept those risks and do whatever you can to mitigate, and just make sure. I sound like a broken record, but the people that handle that intellectual property and the sensitive information, they have to take extra steps to make sure that they're doing their part to not make mistakes. And most of our employees are great employees, so I'm not as concerned about that.
Yeah, Hector, kind of same question. You see that a lot of your customers, do they seem more frenzied? And let me preface by saying, I hear a lot of people talk about going on to quote unquote high alert. And I think that's right. Like, there are things that you can do. It reminds me of when you watch TV and they say, we're now deep cleaning the bathrooms, and you want to say, well, what were you doing before? Just sort of half cleaning, now we're deep cleaning. But Hector, what's been your experience? Do you see that customers are a little bit more intense now?
We actually have seen about a 600% increase in phishing attacks.
Wow. Did you say
600%? Yeah,
wow.
Basically 6x. Because, the reality is that people know that you're going to be working from home in kind of, as Todd said, in probably from networks that are not as secure as your corporate network. And so we definitely have seen a spike in that. But the other thing that was very interesting was that we saw an SMS multi-factor authentication increasing dramatically, and our Okta Verify multi-factor authentication solution, which is basically what it works with push notification, an app, whatever. It's basically like a multi-factor authentication for our users. That actually grew about 80%. And the reason is because our customers are setting up different policies so that if you're outside of the corporate network, you need to use multi-factor authentication. And Okta Verify is kind of one of the most popular ones, but we saw a huge increase in SMS authentication, voice factor, Google Authenticator, Semantic VIP, and even YubiKey. And so part of what our customers are finding is very important is to at least create policies so that you keep people being able to access the applications that they need, but also you try to keep them secure. And I think multi-factor authentication is super important right now because phishing attacks are definitely on the rise.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a scary number.
Yeah.
So Vijaya, we got about a minute before we're going to turn it back to Hunter. I'll give you the last word here on. Are you guys seeing any uptick in attacks aimed at the company?
Yeah, definitely. Like everybody else here, we have seen increase in phishing and some targeted attacks there. But the other thing I would say is, as the travel industry has slowed down and good users are not traveling, the interesting thing for us is fraudsters and people that are trying to scam and commit fraud and risk on the platform, they're not going away, and that continues. So we really had to be extra vigilant in making sure we're not getting impacted negatively, and remind our teams of our mission of keeping an eye on the bad activity and really focus on execution and continue to do better there. So those were the two main things we've seen. Of course, everything else, Zoom security issues and whatnot that we had to deal with as well, like others.
Well, that's wonderful. I appreciate the insight and a lot of scary messages there. Hey, listen, on behalf of all the participants listening, I want to thank our great panel. I always learn something, Hunter. I'll bet you learned a couple things too. It's a really sharp panel, and I appreciate you allowing me to participate here.
Ed, great job. You knocked it out of the park. Thank you so much. Vijaya, thank you so much. Jay, great to meet you. Really compelling company and story. Really want to get to know you and your company better. Hector, you guys are an amazing tear. Really impressed with Todd and the team.
Thank you.
Stock's at an all-time high. Keep going. Thanks for your support. And Todd, wow, what a great story. You guys are really welcome to come to any program, CIO Summit or CISO Summit going forward. We'd love to have you engaged. You guys, we're rolling out a marketplace here in a month well, actually 3 weeks. Would love for you to all take a look at that. Be a great way to go to market for all of you, including yourself, Ed. Thanks, guys. Please stay with us if you can for the next.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Great. I'd like to welcome our search executive panel to the program. Beverly, Michael, Stephen, great to see you all. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hey, everybody. It feels like old home week here, except now we're all home.
I'd rather be in San Francisco, frankly. It's a beautiful
There you go.
place.
Well, I know, Bev,
Nice out.
you're at the beach, you're at the marina or at the beach in sunny Westport, Connecticut, no doubt.
I am. I'm looking at the Bermuda Lagoon, which is kind of nice.
Pretty good, nice spot with your own 40-foot slip, right?
Yes.
There you go. And Stephen, where are you today?
I'm in sunny New Jersey, actually. We it was a big week for New Jersey this week. A lot of the shackles have been unlocked. We've been locked down since, kind of the get-go, obviously being ground zero, and it's, we're getting there. Governor Murphy, whatever your thoughts are, I think he's been a very prudent and judicious along this process, so more to follow.
Excellent. Michael, where are you?
I'm here in the Bay Area. It's beautiful and sunny, and we're continuing to try to focus on our health and sanity. So
it's really an amazing, unusual time that we're going through, as Ed mentioned there before. What a great summit here. What a great package of content and thought leadership and speakers. Bev, when you think about what we're going through now, right? And I love what Ed said, Snehal said in the past, this is going to be a moment you'll remember for the rest of your life. These last 80 days, the next 3 to 6 months. What can people do now with a little extra time to think more reflectively about their professional brand and how they package themselves both online in their relationships and in their persona in the industry? I know you're an expert about branding and packaging.
I think, this is a time when who you are really comes forward, right? I think Ed was saying, or someone was saying earlier, that either under pressure and stress, you are a dictator potentially, or you're an enabler. So, we all have a brand. The people that work with you, your family, your community, they all kind of know you under certain circumstances. But under stress, some people have the ability to sustain being an enabler, but others, perhaps go into the dictator mode. So, it's very important to know yourself, right? So you can find out from your spouse or from your significant other, how am I coping? But I think it's a time for, getting your act together like never before. You really do want to look back on this time and say, I did my best. I think I, saved my company in some way. I'm able to retain my talent when this is less stressful. What matters the most? That you build a great team, you manage under all circumstances to keep that team engaged and loyal to you and doing the right thing. So, if there is some downtime, it's a good thing to reflect, am I doing what I should be doing? Am I doing what my favorite leader would be doing in keeping things going as well as possible? So the brand comes, and so you're displaying now what your true brand and your true colors are, and people will remember you for this.
Hey, Bev, a little bit about your firm.
So we're a retained search firm. We specialize in recruiting CIOs, CISOs, and direct reports. We're out of Westport, but we do searches all over the country. Apple has been a client for many years for me. And we also have an executive coaching practice. So during this downtime for a little bit of, my search business is a little soft right now. I know it'll pick up, but I'm actually coaching 3 C-level people who are, 2 of whom are between jobs. and we're helping put a marketing plan in place for them and helping them with networking techniques. A lot of people have not been in the job market are a little bit nervous about how do I approach talking to executive search firms. So we have a process to help people with that. And I've been associated with Hunter Muller for maybe, I don't know, 20 years.
20, I think 20. It's Halbrecht Lieberman, folks. Thanks, Bev.
Thanks.
Hey, Stephen, you're an amazing guy. You've had a great career and a military background, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Hey, Hunter. Thanks for having me again. And hey, everybody. Steve Spagnuolo. I'm with Stanton Chase. We're a global retained search leadership advisory firm. We're in north of 45 countries, north of 75 offices around the world. I lead our digital security and risk practice. I do a lot of my work with my partner, Greg Selker, who's a 30-year software headhunter and spends a lot of time on the West Coast with a lot of VCs. And first, Hunter, I have to applaud you in the HMG team. I really think I'm on several different organizations where I've been involved with panels this time, and they're all great. But I think HMG has really been the first mover in terms of getting out. I think it was week 2 you guys were out there with the whole schedule, not just kind of one a week. I mean, you guys are doing like 2 or 3 a week, and it's been fantastic. And I applaud you guys. It's been seamless as most HMG things are. And I have to give a little bit of a shout out to Snehal as well. Hunter, you're right. I'm a former Marine infantry guy, 11 years in uniform, Naval Academy Marine, and many moons ago, many fewer pounds ago, but I take great pride in listening to a guy like Snehal, who didn't have to really spend 2 years kind of pretty successful guy going kind of public service route, and you can see the joy that he has and the lessons he's learned bringing back that he's applying now, and I think that's really cool. And I have a little bit of a quick anecdote, Ed Amoroso anecdote. I had spoken with Ed before this, but probably the first time I was meeting this. I think he's heard this. It's probably around 2014. It was an in-person gathering. He was the keynote. And 6 years ago isn't too long ago, but in cyber years, it's a long time ago if you think about it. And he has this little kind of basic presentation. It was kind of just very basic PowerPoint. And the thematic was, transition to cloud. Don't stay kind of hard perimeter. And it was all CISOs, and you really half the room were kind of naysayers. And it was only 6 years ago, and kind of think of kind of where we are now. And so it's just really interesting. Interesting times for sure. You've seen a lot of the kind of talking points that I'm going to the market to Hunter, and I've sent to you and maybe Ed. But I kind of twin thematic. One is unity of effort wins the day in both cyber and COVID, and we can expand on that if we have time. We may maybe not have time, but really unity of effort. It goes above beyond just kind of working collaboratively. It's really kind of a mindset and mind share, putting agendas aside and doing whatever it takes, obviously within kind of all norms and legal parameters to kind of get the job done and do it well and take care of your people. The other is in this kind of present state of what is really a constant state of ambiguity, of adversity, and fluid zero guidepost operating environment. The CISO really has become a beacon of light across the organization. I think Jay alluded to that earlier, and it's fantastic to see because, and again, if anybody within the organization is comfortable working with ambiguity, it is the CISO. That's their pro forma day in, day out, and their team. And if we have time again, we can expand upon that. So, really happy to be here.
Thanks, Stephen. Great job. Really appreciate your loyalty and engagement over the years, and best wishes for you at Stanton Chase. That's a great firm. Hey, Michael, good to see you again.
You as well.
So Hitch Partners, that's a few years now, right?
It is. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And I echo with a few others and Steve just said. I mean, I just think this platform, you did an amazing job pivoting and to get it out so soon. It's just great to see for the community. That's what Steve and Beverly and I really want to see, that level of engagement with the community is great. So thank you for having us. Yeah, so Hitch Partners, I'm here in the Bay Area, but we're national as well. We manage the executive search project specializing in the CISO and head of security space, but we're particularly focused in engineering oriented environments, AppSec and the SecEng space particularly. We also do a lot on the physical security side, CISO, but many of our clients are kind of high consequence software producing companies that are already delivering their services utilizing public cloud infrastructure, or they're rapidly moving in that area. And then outside of the search side, we spend a lot of time helping and advising CISOs and their organizations on kind of constantly trying to think of content and tools that help CISOs with their career and branding. And one of the things I'll mention we came out with that we can go through HMG, or happy to share it directly, but I know Hunter and the team have it, is a national compensation and reporting structure survey report that we do every year. The reporting structure at pre-COVID and post-COVID will be really different with the CISO. We've seen this change specifically in our little corner of the world around security engineering and product security. You'll see that take shape and a little bit more emphasis on that. I actually think Jay said it the best earlier, but I believe the evolution of the CISO position has really positioned them to be built for this crisis. It's really a time to shine for a well-positioned CISO in the right organization with the right sponsorship. They really do have the most unique view of data flow and policies and privacy within a company. And so I think the things that we're seeing that are really interesting right now is this strength and focus on relationship building at the executive level and the board level with CISOs. Even the more technical CISOs are up and coming, haven't been kind of finished products throughout their career, but they're getting a real shot and a platform. And the other to really communicate at that highest level to sort of de-risk the business. I think the other area is this sort of, again, unprecedented concentration on communication across their company on things like business continuity planning and sustainability models where they were a key factor, and now they may be leading that, or even the post-pandemic return to office strategies. We're talking to CISOs every day that are really leading that effort, which is really special, and it puts them, to Beverly's point, into a more branded executive. And I think the other thing that we're seeing that's key, and I think Steve hit upon it, was this kind of strength and more empathetic communication with their teams. Really working harder to be a better hiring manager. Can't we forget we are hiring. There people are hiring in security right now at a very rapid pace, and specifically in the security engineering we're seeing it. But really being that leader as far as a strong manager to your team and what they're all going through, everyone's going through and experiencing this differently. But also being a great hiring manager and making sure those candidates that you're after are having an amazing candidate experience. It's really easy to drop the ball in today's with all the chaos going on. So just a few points I would bring up we can get into.
Excellent points. Thanks, Michael. Hey, I love my clients, and I love helping them win. So we knew we had to pivot and accelerate the digital platform, and appreciate the compliment. Michael, a little bit more detail on the report, pre and post COVID-19. Any other insights relative to compensation going up and down, or any other nuances?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Compensation is actually on the base side has really kind of maintained across almost a national average. Obviously, there's outlying situations, whether it's Fortune 50, Fortune 100, and also some high consequence software environments. Kind of throw off the numbers, but for the most part, it's stayed fairly consistent. I think the biggest area that we see of changes in reporting structure. We started off the year with I think it was 9 or 10 CISO searches. All 10 of them were reporting to a different executive in their companies. So it's really a position without a direct home. It depends on the company, their size, their shape, how they're selling their products and services, what their status is. So if they're already in the cloud, if they're moving to it, but it really is that's probably the most striking change that we see is that the position again has an opportunity to really put a foothold into certain areas, but we are seeing a lot of change. And it used to be very clear. It was always a lieutenant under the CIO's position. Now that those percentages have dropped in many cases in many verticals, and you're seeing it kind of reporting all over. So that's probably one of the biggest striking areas. I think the other thing that we're seeing is that that CISOs are not leaving because of money. They're not leaving they're not going to their next position because of compensation. It's really about the sponsorship, the budgeting, the ability to say what I interviewed for is indeed what I'm working for. Right. things of those natures and that nature. So those are some of the big things that came out of the survey.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael. I think Tom Hoffman's on the webinar here today. I'd like to follow up with you, do an interview about the report further.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure.
I'd like to add just a comment. I agree with Michael's comments. And the other change that I'm seeing in the CISO world is the ask by the board to have the CISO participate at the board level meetings. You know, so even if the CISO is reporting, let's say, to the CIO, I know many CIOs that are bringing their CISO to talk about cybersecurity strategy and, you know, what's going on. So, because the board in every company has on their agenda the cybersecurity topic. So who better to speak to it than bringing your CISO? So I'm seeing CISOs, you know, a little nervous about this in some cases, but others just really exhilarated to be participating at the strategic level and even at the tactical level. The board wants to know what exactly is being done, you know, to mitigate certain things. So it's great. The visibility is just wonderful for CISOs.
And Bev, you've always been a really brilliant big thinker, strategic thinker in helping your clients find that right position for themselves in terms of their style, leadership, and the culture.
Well, you know, you have to get a lot of factors right to make a successful hire. And, you know, today, when I, you know, talk to a client, it could be the president or the chief operating officer or the CIO about the CISO, you know, they don't want to sacrifice anything in the area of executive skills. They want somebody who is absolutely articulate and smart and strategic and able to lead and manage well. So all of those big soft skills, but they also want someone who can roll up sleeves and has an engineering background, can't be, you know, snowed by real technical network architects. So it's really an incredibly complex package. And the components of that package are always challenging for us recruiters because, you know, getting the culture right is always a little bit tricky, but you tend to look for people who know themselves, right? I don't know the CISO as well as she knows herself. So I try to help a person walk through what I'm perceiving as the culture they'll be going into and finding out if they think that that would be good for them.
Excellent. Thanks, Bev. Hey, Todd and Jay, please, if you're still with us, join us. You can turn your cameras back on. Stephen, final comments regarding the role of the CISO?
Yeah, and I just want to, Michael, I want to echo, he made me think, really, truly, most of the folks that I'm talking to when they're leaving is because of a bad situation where they are currently. But I would say one thing that hasn't been mentioned, I want to emphasize as far as the CISO, and hopefully, I mean, Todd, I hopefully agrees, and others, the critical importance of building a bench and a bench of deputies, whether it's in name, you know, in title of deputy or deputies, or, you know, functioning where they're double hatting, because it's so complex, it's so busy. And the way you succeed as a CISO is really to, you know, build a strong bench where they're cross-training and developing, and really where they can kind of function. And ideally, the goal is to be able to function if you're out of pocket for a day or 2 or 3 days or whatever, you know, business kind of carries on. So, and through this kind of 8 weeks, you know, it's interesting to see and important to highlight and recognize those emergent or surprise leaders. Maybe we weren't thinking as about those leaders and kind of risen because of this. They just naturally deal with uncertainty where we really see they're kind of the quiet performers doing a good job, and maybe some folks who kind of had on mark for kind of stardom, if you will, maybe have folded a bit. And, you know, and I'm not saying you get rid of them, but you have to kind of rethink about that. So that's, I think, you know, opportunities that kind of come out of this as well. So I'll leave it there, but, you know, thanks for having me on, Hunter, and great to meet everybody.
Excellent. We're just about at the top of the hour, folks. I really want to thank you all. Michael, great to see you. Beverly, thank you. Todd, awesome to have you on board. Great story. Stephen, excellent job. Jay, really looking forward to learning more about your company, Synack. Folks, another, I think, genius session here at HMG Live. Again, thanks everyone for your active participation. We're going to be doing live events all the way through the fall, and then when we go hybrid in early September, October, we're going to continue virtually broadcasting from physical summits. So there's a lot more to come. We'll be back in the Valley live at the Rosewood Hotel, our home, Silicon Valley, November 17th. So we'd love to see everyone there in person. Take care and be safe.